into the middle of legislation session, Councilmember Lewis sought to secure a leadership role in the City Council. With an overwhelming vote, she became co-chair of the Women's Caucus and vice chair to the Black Latinosa and Asian Caucus. She is also a member of the Committee on Civil Service and Labor, Economics Development, Education, Finance, Housing and Buildings, Youth Services, and the Justice System. Prior to joining the City Council, Lewis worked as an administrator in healthcare at the Mount Sinai Hospital and was an active 1199 member for 8 years. Lewis was also a seasoned publicist with 15 years of experience and a journalist with several media outlets. In 2012, she founded Girls Leading Up, GLU, an organization seeking to transform girls and young women into emerging leaders through mentoring and hands-on experience. Her dedication to the youth and to women's empowerment stems from life-changing experiences that she has used to enact positive change. As a staunch believer in civic engagement, Lewis has worked closely with elected officials, city agencies, nonprofit organizations, and small businesses to bridge the opportunity gap through education. Her parents immigrated from Haiti to Brooklyn when they overcame language barriers, discrimination, and other challenges while rebuilding their lives in Brooklyn as a middle-class family. Lewis's mother was a longtime healthcare professional and 1199 member with her father, who worked as a law enforcement professional and later a yellow cab driver. Their experience, determination, and service to the community would serve as a foundation for Lewis' work in social justice, immigrants and workers' rights, gender equality, and women's empowerment. Councilmember Lewis is a proud graduate of the New York City public school system as an alumna of Midwoods High School, located in the heart of Flatbush. She holds a master's degree in public administration with a concentration in strategic communications with New York University, Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service, and a bachelor's degree in journalism from Long Island University. Whew, that was a mouthful, but it was great to read it. Ladies, thank you. Thank you so much for participating tonight. I am excited about my first question for you. Why did you decide to get into public service? It's a tireless and a thankless job, but you do it with ease. Shivona, can you answer that for me?
Well, thank you so much first to being on this panel, Rochelle, all that you do as an ally to Black women. I have had the opportunity to visit your courses, and I've seen the room filled with women who look like me, who have higher aspirations in politics. And shout out to you, Farah. It's a pleasure to be here with your extensive background. I'm like, why does she look so young? But to answer to answer your question, nothing happens for marginalized people unless there's legislation. We wouldn't have the right to vote. We wouldn't have the right to live in certain communities. We wouldn't have any rights if it was not for legislation. So running for office was simply the next step in my activism. I knew that my community needed leadership like mine. They needed a strong and unapologetic voice who was willing to put themselves on the line and fight for us all. Unfortunately, my race was unsuccessful, but the groundwork and the movement that we laid in the Bronx, I am very, very proud of.
Yes, I'm one of your followers, and I was one of your, I'm still rooting for you. This is, the Bronx did a disservice not sending you to Congress, but this is not the end. This is actually probably the beginning. So thank you.
It feels like it. It feels a little bit like the beginning.
Yes. Farah?
I just want to thank Rochelle and you, Sheba, and the dynamic women of Dare to Run for inviting me tonight. And I'm so happy to be sharing this space with you, Chivona. I don't know if Assemblyman Hyman will be on, but I'm very happy to be here as women have been fighting for a long time and demanding to be heard and to be seen. I'm so grateful that people are listening now. Why did I decide to run for office? It's a long story, but the most important component is I was raised in East Flatbush, and for a long time, as I look in other communities in Brooklyn, I look at Bed-Stuy, I look at Brownsville, I look at East New York. East Flatbush is always left out of the conversation. I look at other communities, they have community centers, they have resources, they're considered the most impoverished, but we have the same issues right here in East Flatbush. And I wanted to make sure that our voices were heard at City Hall, that we did have a seat at the table, and that we were fighting for the people in our district. There were so many needs that were unmet, and I knew what those needs were, and I'm able to accomplish providing those services to my community. And I'm just grateful to have the confidence and the trust of the voters in my district to deliver for them each and every day. So as you mentioned earlier, Sheba, this is a thankless job, but I'm just grateful to serve my community in this capacity. And I know how to get the resources from City Hall back to my district.
And I love that. Thank you. And I'm glad that you mentioned Assemblywoman Alicia Hyman. She is actually, again, doing the work. She is right now at the Assembly fighting for a bill. So we hope that before this evening is over, she's able to jump on and speak her lived experiences, but we'll push on in regard what we're here to do. So my next question is, what sacrifices have you made in order to be a public servant, both professionally and personally?
Well, a lot of sacrifices, and I just want to clear it up. It's Chivona. Judge my parents; those activists, they spelled it weird, but it's Chivona.
Okay.
A lot of activists. A lot of people, we deny ourselves self-care. It's a 7-day-a-week job. It's a 24-hour-a-day thing. And you sacrifice your personal time. You sacrifice your time with your family. You sacrifice your finances. And as of late, and for a long time now, being a civil rights activist and being the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, Greater New York, we are at war in this country, to be quite frank, between a corrupt system and an oppressive system. So we're easily met with police officers in riot gear. And now with number 45 in office, this monster, we also have to worry about white supremacists. So I receive death threats. That's how much I love my community. I wake up to text messages and people with obscenities and all over my social media. But if we can have equity in this country, if we can have quality education and people who have melanin in their skin are not denied access to their God-given human rights, then my personal sacrifice is very small. So I'm grateful to makeup that covers these crazy bags that I get sometimes, but it's all worth it. And to God be the glory for my people.
Sometimes when I listen to you, I feel like I'm looking at a mirror. I really do, because
well, I think that's a compliment. You're gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you, and as well as about Farah and Alicia. So it's a never ending sacrifice. Farah, can you tell me about your experience?
I think the same as Chivona mentioned. Of course, this is definitely a job with long hours, but most importantly, it's not for the faint of heart. This is not a job. If you think this job will turn you into Beyonce and Jay-Z, this is not the job for you. This job is basically to serve people. I wanted to share this real quickly, and I mentioned to a friend earlier I would share it, and I'm so happy that you guys asked this question. I was married before I ran for office. So I lost a marriage trying to serve my community, to serve my people. I believe that I was born to serve. I was born to serve God and serve people. And I was married. My dad was severely sick, and still till now, I still haven't been able to see him as often as I would. So you lose a lot being a servant. Working in public service is not easy. And if you are faint of heart, if you take things to heart, if you don't have tough skin, this is not the job for you. And I commend Ms. Newsome, because I know, and I see you on the front lines, and I know how hard you work. So whether if you're an elected official or just a public servant, an advocate or an activist, just know, like, you will be giving up a lot of your time, your energy, your personal time, your privacy to do this job, and you have to want to do it because you want to serve people.
Yes, yes. Thank you, ladies, for, this is not only for people like myself currently running for office, but this is for the young people anyone on here, and who will see or listen to the recording later, to know that, again, this work is not something that you just say, today I'm going to do it, tomorrow, I'll pick it up tomorrow. It is something that is continuous. It has to be a burning flame in your spirit, to get up and do this work, because it is not easy. And I appreciate everyone, especially you ladies, especially Black women, who are finally being heard and respected for the intelligence, for the hard work that we've always put in, but now it's being recognized. So I appreciate that. My next question is based on what you just said, Chivona. And I've been practicing your name, girl. I've been practicing it. And
it's not spelled how it sounds. I will not hold it against you.
I'm sorry. So this question is, how has the recent pandemic and violence that has since ensued affected you and your run for office, and how has it affected your community?
Well, when the COVID crisis hit, me in conjunction with the campaign, in conjunction with Black Lives Matter Greater New York, we called on Governor Cuomo. We needed more testing sites. We saw the numbers coming out of Milwaukee, coming out of Chicago, and predominantly Black areas. And it came to be that the Bronx became the epicenter of the COVID pandemic. So we were doing wellness checks. That our campaign just switched to mutual aid and serving people. So in the process, since COVID happened until now, we've fed about 6,000 people. I'm talking about door service, same way Uber would call you and say, hey, we're downstairs, come get your groceries. So the people who were affected and infected with COVID, we would simply leave it on their doorstep, leave it at their apartment door. So I know that it has some effect. Absolutely. And I'm okay with that sacrifice, because with the country being in such despair, with almost 40 million people being unemployed, I couldn't bring myself, much to the chagrin of my finance team, to call and ask for money. How can you ask a hurting nation for money to feed a campaign? But it just gave me time to engage, to be there. So when Mayor Bill de Blasio and Dermot Shea, where there was racism found in social distance massing, and there was masks not being worn and Black men being assaulted, I put myself on the front line. So I really didn't get that chance past the first week to quite quarantine, because there's been so many injustices happening. So I've been out in Minneapolis. I was on the ground at George Floyd's memorial site when the first officer was arrested. Our president of Black Lives Matter Greater New York, Nepal Kiazolu, just got most recently arrested in Kentucky. So we have just been fighting nonstop. I actually took a vacation after the election. It was the first time in about a year and a half. So I got to lay in the sun and recharge, because you simply can't pour from an empty cup. But the work continues. And the thing about Black people who happen to be most impoverished and suffer at the hands of the wealth disparity in this nation is, with or without COVID-19, there's food injustice, there's housing injustice. So all the things that currently affected our community, they were just amplified. So it's just been a tough job, and the work is absolutely not done.
Right. Thank you. Farah?
So COVID-19 exposed the systemic racism and disparities that we've seen for many, many years, centuries in Black and Brown communities. But I believe that COVID-19 catalyzed the change that we needed to see nationally, locally. Most importantly, it's a bittersweet thing. And I say that because thousands of lives were lost, but at the same time, we were able to pass legislation we would not have been able to pass if it wasn't for COVID-19, if it wasn't for the opportunity to expose all the disparities that were happening in our communities. It was very difficult for us, I would say, in the city council, because it was hard for us to get access to resources from the mayor constantly, daily. Hour after hour, we'd be sending letters to both him and the governor to address the most important needs on the grounds in our communities. And then at some point, I said, let's call it our Save Ourselves campaign. We started to create meal hubs. In my community, I have over 23 meal hubs where we turn pantries, churches, schools into basically meal hubs because of food insecurity. For weeks, we've heard from principals and parents letting us know that they didn't have access to electronic devices, where we were paying Cablevision just for kids to get access to Wi-Fi, to get access to electronic devices, exposing the chancellor, exposing the mayor to ensure that folks in our communities got access to electronic devices for remote learning. Kids went months without learning. In addition to that, the barriers in healthcare. Some of our hospitals didn't have ventilators. Some of our hospitals didn't have masks, didn't have gowns. So we found ourselves going online, going to other states to go and purchase that on our own with funds from our own pockets. So COVID-19 for me as a new elected official kind of like changed the game. I came into office into this conundrum of a problem, but most importantly, it also let me know what issues we have here locally in our community and what we need to be addressing day after day to expose the most needed resources and ensuring that our governor and our mayor are providing those.
To expand on the question that I asked, I want to know, in reading your biographies, you've both done incredible work. Chivona?
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Yes, you said it right.
What did you hope to accomplish had you been elected into Congress? What were the three most important tasks you had designed in your mind that you were going to fight for if you had gotten your seat?
Well, I still will continue to work on these issues as I am a part of the income movement. So me and a coalition, which included Andrew Yang, we wrote a letter asking for stimulus, asking for a universal basic income. It was what Martin Luther King was working on, one of his last missions, a guaranteed income to end poverty, to eradicate poverty. So I still will continue to push for a universal basic income. I'll still lobby and harass electeds for that. We did get a small win with the first stimulus check, but that check should continue on forever, and we would see a decrease in the wealth disparity, number one, with the universal basic income. Secondly, we would see an overall growth in the United States economy. People do not have a floor line. In the district I was running in, where I was born and raised and where I currently live, the median income is about $28,000 a year. The United States median income is about $53,000, and New York City is $73,000. So the people in my community, we are living in dire poverty. So one would be an economic thing. Secondly, as Farah discussed, talking about healthcare. If we had universal healthcare for all, healthcare would not have been a problem. People who have pre-existing conditions, usually people who are impoverished, would have been getting the preventative care that they needed, so they would have had a fighting chance against COVID-19. And lastly, we absolutely need to abolish police. So to get there, we need to defund the police. We need some reform happening there, and we need to hold police accountable. So we need to end qualified immunity. So I had a full legislative package for police reform, and that has not ended as well. So all the things that I was going on to push, and why I tell people, yes, it's way more powerful. You can write the legislation when you are in office. But the whole purpose of my campaign and everything I do is to let people know that they are powerful. So as of right now, the governor has adopted about 3 of the acts that we at Black Lives Matter Greater New York have proposed. And they fall under the Black Act, and you can find it on ShivonaNewsome.com. But I'd been working on which became the Andrew Kearse Act, which is prosecuting officers who deny you medical care, ending the chokehold ban, and a whole host of other issues. And I will continue to push forward for that legislation. Not being elected, with conversations with the governor, we got 38,000 felons their voting rights. So the work and the political action isn't going to stop, but those were my top 3.
I love it.
Thank you.
Farah?
And I just want to share with you, Ms. Newsome, those are awesome. I admire you and all the work that you've been doing over the years. And can relate to a lot of it. But just to briefly share, because some of what Ms. Newsome shared is some of the things that I've been working on, especially the chokehold bill. I got elected in 2019, and one of the first bills that I submitted was the chokehold bill. But because I wasn't the first in time, meaning I wasn't the first one to submit it, because it was submitted in 2018 by another member, I had to jump onto his bill. But we were able to get that passed in the council and actually add additional measures to the initial bill. Not just the chokehold, but other maneuvers, because we know that that is just not one way for them to try to kill our Black and brown men. But to answer the question in its entirety, economics. I came into the council knowing that I wanted to work very hard on affordable housing, but more so home ownership. We know that is the way to intergenerational wealth. And we have nonprofit I love advocates, and we have nonprofit organizations in our communities that provide access to information and resources for home ownership, for access to resources to start small businesses. Those two are not, they're interconnected with one another. This is how the lifeblood and lifeline of our communities continue to thrive. So these are things that I will continue to work on, but if it's definitely expanded to public safety based off the many viral videos that we've seen over the last months, over the last years, of Black and brown people that look like some of us here on this Zoom that have been abused and killed by police officers. And it's something that we definitely need to address on a daily basis. While the conversation's hot, we have to jump in and ensure that we're addressing it, we're creating bills, and we're supporting people like Ms. Newsome and other organizations that fight against racial injustice in the United States.
I'm so happy to hear that, and I'm about to send you a full legislative package that we can work on together once we get off this panel. It's already drafted, the policy. I am here for it.
I love it. See, this is when connections happen, and then legislation gets passed when people make connections like this. So this is amazing. Thank you, ladies. Going forward, I always try to loop questions together. And this one is close to our hearts because we know how our Black and brown people are killed at the hands of the police on any given day at any given time. How do you think New York City should respond to the ever-increasing number of people being killed while in police custody, while handcuffed, while walking in the street? How do you think we should address it? I know, Chivona, you said defunding the police, but can we expand on that idea?
Well, defunding the police, because I feel like that term frightens a lot of people and they were unclear of what it means. It means reallocating funding. It means giving money to people like Save Our Streets and Street Corner Resources, people who have been involved in the criminal justice system, who are gun violence interrupters. But what I really want people to know, because I know this always comes up as a GOP talking point, and because I have a platform right here, I have to mention it. Please, any Black people or anyone listening, please do not use the term Black on Black crime to defend police brutality. It doesn't exist. Crime happens in regards to proximity. So crime happens between white people, which is actually a much higher in statistical rate. And secondly, crime is comparable. When you think about the zip code you live in, where there's a high number of unemployment and a high number of poverty, those places usually have the most crime. But expanding our police, we need to end qualified immunity. We need to hold police officers accountable. We need to remove guns from our schools. That needs to happen. And right now, the NYPD, I know there's been some budget adjustments, not what us activists are pleased with, but the NYPD has about $11 billion. Now, either president we get come November, they're still going to fund the NYPD. They're still going to fund state budgets. But we need to get into community policing. We need the community to be accountable. We need the community to patrol our streets. And as we see in other communities, they have their own education system. They have their own ambulances. And Black and brown communities, we need to step forward. We need to unleash a blueprint. I am happy to share that. We're currently working on something called Black Opportunities in conjunction with one of our members, Nick Cannon, where it's economic development. We're working on a deal for more affordable housing. And these are the things that need to happen. And we have to think about the history and the racism of policing. Why policing will never truly work for people who look like us. We have to go back to the Fugitive Slave Act. We have to think about what was the true role of police officers for them to capture people who look like me and return them back to plantations. So once we do away with that system, once we give people economics, once we change the thinking, and we actually need laws that are going to protect people from the police. If a cop, a law enforcement officer fails to do their job, they need to be prosecuted the same way as you or I would. So I think that we need to level the playing field in terms of that. And we need a national registry in terms of if an officer has committed a crime, pretty much misconduct in New York City and New York State, he or she should not be allowed to move to another state and continue their reign of terror.
I appreciate that. Farah?
Sorry about that. I'm pretty sure you guys can hear the thunder.
Oh, it's crazy. I'm trying to talk through it.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, it's literally lighting up my room.
I'm actually jumping off, so I have to run to my district office. There's a flood and they're texting like crazy.
Okay.
The city budget negotiations were perhaps the most difficult in city council history. So we've heard from advocates, we heard from the community to defund the NYPD, and the cries that we heard were loud and clear, and we ensured that it happened. The divestment is definitely not the first step, and definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. And I know that a lot of advocates were not happy with the way we were able to divest. And I believe that there's other ways that we can do it. We need to continue to do it, but there's definitely other ways that we can divest. Some of the funds that went into the divestment went into restoring some youth programming, youth initiatives, food insecurity programs. But I think that we need to dig deeper, go harder, and ensure that we're really thinking about the right ways to get the funds out of NYPD and into the right places. For instance, I remember when we were having a conversation with some of my colleagues, and myself and another council member encouraged the colleagues and those in leadership in budget and negotiation to take some of those funds and to put it into cure violence organizations. Cure violence organizations are basically those local organizations in our communities in the Bronx and Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island that go out into the community to kind of like de-escalate issues happening in the community, whether it be fighting, whether it be somebody with an actual gun, any type of issue happening in our communities. And I believe, in my personal opinion, a community-based approach like Cure Violence is the way and the new wave and the next step for us to create just a new approach on how to deal with what's happening in our community. So I agree with a lot of what Ms. Newsome said. And I think we need to hear from folks like you, especially you're running for office, but just as an influential leader and an influencer, we need that information before our decisions are made in City Hall and in Albany to ensure that the implementation process makes sense for those on the ground.
Well, I just want to add this as an educator for the last 22 years, and the way the $1 billion was allocated back to schools. We don't need police in schools. We need guidance counselors. We need social workers. We need people who programs that teach STEM, real STEM programs, teaching kids life skills and teaching them how to become electricians, just building on their natural abilities. And $1 billion going back into the schools to allow for more police to be in the schools is not what our children need to see every day when they come to school. They see it in their communities already. They know, to me, I call schools should be schoolhouses, and it should be the home that you imagine. If you don't have a place of comfort and stability, it should be that place where you go to get that. And a lot of times our young people don't feel safe at school. They don't feel safe in the streets. They don't feel safe at home. So when do they stop being traumatized and stop being the scapegoats of society?
Right.
When do we say enough is enough and give our kids what they rightfully deserve? So I appreciate both of you speaking truth to power on how you feel about police brutality and defunding the police. But our kids are suffering, and I see it every day. I am a regional enrichment center supervisor right now, and granted, it's I have pre-K up to middle school in the rec that I'm at, and it's a safe place. It's an oasis. But what we've created at my rec center is what should happen in 1,800 schools every day, and it's not happening. And our kids are being hurt, and the police are being funded. And it's where is the equity in that? So I appreciate both of your responses to that. Ms. Lewis, do you need to jump off, or do I have one question I could ask? One last question.
Yeah, I'm just telling them I'll be off soon to, hold down the fort. Yeah.
Okay. So this is really close to my heart. Black women have the highest mortality rate of dying while giving birth. Why do you think this is happening? How would you address this issue to ensure that patients are not discriminated against while in the hospital, and patients have the access to the best care that they need while under medical supervision?
The reason why I think it's happening is because barriers in healthcare. As myself and Ms. Newsom shared earlier, there's definitely a lot of barriers, but we're just disrespected as Black women. We don't have the same access to resources. We don't have the same doctors. The same doctors and health providers don't pay the same attention to us as they would any other race. They don't. Our cry for help is much different because we can take the pain compared to some other folks. And I share that because I've watched an assembly member lose a child in a local hospital in Brooklyn. And it was so devastating because as much as she shared that she was in pain, they looked at her like, you're Black and you're tough, like deal with it. And she lost her baby at 7 months. How do we address it? We need to change the culture. We need to change the providers that are in particular hospitals. We need to change the culture, and we need to change how they communicate with us. As co-chair of the Women's Caucus and the City Council, some of the legislation that we've put forth and some of the advocacy we've had was to implement more midwives and to implement more doulas. Because most doulas that we've been working with or that have even approached us look like us, Black and brown women, and can actually understand the process. So we've been asking for that. We're fighting for it, willing to take more recommendations. And you said it's near and dear to you, and I would love to hear how we can change how things are happening. I would love to take those recommendations from you. But most importantly, from what I've seen and what I've been assessing, this is something that I work on actually every week. Most healthcare providers do not want to address some of the matters that we have as birthing women. They just don't want to address it. It's costly. They don't want to hear what we have to say. And quite frankly, we just don't matter to them. That's my personal opinion. We just don't matter. And we need to ensure that we're hiring more people and providing more resources that could address the matters that we have as Black women.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. There was a woman rather, her name was Amber Isaac, and she lost her life here in the Bronx during COVID. And I work closely with her partner, Bruce, and I've had the time to speak to, off the record, of course, people don't want to share, people are fearful of their jobs. It's an ongoing problem, as Ms. Lewis just attested to. And it doesn't even matter if you're a wealthy Black woman, or if you're a powerful assemblywoman, or if you're someone like Serena Williams. Our care is denied because you think back to the history of how we have women's reproductive medications and stuff. It was tested out on Black slaves. They gave us no anesthesia, and that's where it came from. Now, your question was, how do we move forward? What we need to move forward is, I'm going to say it a million times so you get sick of me, we need universal healthcare. So no woman is going to be discriminated against because she cannot pay her bill. We get rid of that. Also, by having free college tuition, we'll have more Black doctors, because I truly believe that representation matters. Now, when you go into these hospitals, because let's be real, a hospital is like a business. The healthcare industry is a business. How many people who look like us? How many Black women are sitting at the heads of these tables? So of course, the culture is not going to shift unless we pass legislation. I know that New York State was working on some kind of council or something to address this issue, but we need to have more Black doctors, and we need to have more Black people in management. And we need to pass legislation and possibly arrest and sue doctors who fail to do their sworn oath and their sworn duty.
So both of you are speaking truth to power. I follow Dr. Arabia Mollett, who is a doctor in the Bronx, in the ER, and she had a long story in regards to how, as a doctor, a Black doctor, she is overlooked, questioned about the treatment that she wants to provide for, and medical medication she wants to provide to her patients, questioned by nurses. You know, oh, they just want more drugs. They're not really in pain. Questioning her validity as a professional. And also being called Arabia by a head doctor, where of her non-Black counterparts were being called doctor. And she called it out and was told, well, he went to so-and-so school and his experience was this, so he's earned that title, as to say she didn't earn that same title, but she has doctor in front of her name and MD at the end of her name. Mm-hmm. So it is systemic. It is systemic racism. And when I speak to that, this speaks to my heart. My daughter recently had triplets in October of last year. And one of my grandsons had a heart problem, so he was in the hospital waiting for a surgery. And one day I just popped up, and in his NICU, he was one of two Black children, Black babies in there. And I walked over to my grandson, and if you're a mother, you know when a child has dribbled and is fresh, and when it's dry on the side of the mouth, you know that it's been sitting there for a while. And so I said to the nurse, why is his mouth like this? And why is his CPAP not bubbling? Oh, he's fine, he's fine. I said, no, because I like to ask questions, right? I had asked a week before, and I was sitting with Caden, and the nurse said, excuse me, Grandma, I need to get his CPAP because it's not bubbling. That means he's not getting the air he needs. So I said the nurse's name to the nurse, who told me, oh, he's fine. And they tried to move me out the room so they could fix it on the low, you know. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. So I had a meeting that I was supposed to go. I was just going to pop in, make sure he was okay, and go about my day. I ended up staying there till 3 hours, till 7 o'clock in the evening, because I wanted to make sure my grandson was getting the proper care he needed. And the thing that bothers me the most is when you go to the hospital and you have to ask, what's your name? And that's when they decide that they want to do the right thing. Because now, oh, you must be one of those Black people who will write me up, make a phone call patients advocacy. We shouldn't have to go through this.
Right.
And so it is systemic. And from birth, our children are treated different. My grandson was less than 3 months old, less than 2 months old, waiting for heart surgery, and you're still treating him differently in a hospital, in one of the most prestigious New York hospitals. And so this is why I ask this question, because something has to be done, and legislation needs to be written where patients' rights means that everyone gets what they need, not what you think they deserve.
Right.
So that was my last question. I want to extend my gratitude to both you, Ms. Newsome, and you, Ms. Lewis, for taking the time out of your very busy schedules, for speaking from your experiences, and again, providing the audience and myself with some new insight on the work that you're doing out in the world. You are both inspirations to me. I am appreciative of all your work, and Dare to Run is dear to my heart because they gave me the opportunity as a woman of color, Black woman, to learn about running for office. And I took that knowledge and I'm running. It is not easy. I feel sometimes like I am in a desert alone, but then I meet women and I see women like you doing the work, and I'm appreciative of it. And I don't know if we have time for questions, Rachel?
Yeah, we definitely do, if you want to take a couple, absolutely.
I would love to take some questions.
So if anyone does have any questions, please type them into the chat and Sheba will be happy to address them to Farah and Chivona.
So someone is saying medical, I don't see where it went. Can you read the question for me, Rachel? Because it comes in on my screen and then it bounces off.
Sure, so Jacinta, who's also a Dare to Run alumni, is saying that medical fellowships are not marketed to communities of color and they should be extended to international students. So I guess her question would be, how do you plan to address that, or what can we do to address that?
Well, this is the first I've heard of medical fellowships not being shared with the community at large, and particularly communities of color. I can take this back. I could actually also share this with the folks in the congressional offices and the state elected officials to see what could be done about this as well. The only issue is that if it's a private institution, let's just say NYU, for instance, they are not obligated to share this with in aggregate with everyone. But we can see if there's some type of legislation we could put forth regarding, so I'm just taking it down.
Thank you.
Or we can always protest and shut it down. I have a bullhorn or two in the truck. Just let me know if you guys need me to come in front of a hospital or something.
And I think the other issue with this is that I think some institutions automatically assume it's only international students that would be interested in this. And that should not be the way that they go about this. So I agree with protesting, and I also agree with having them change their policies and their ways, and forcing them to do that, whether it be private or public. Everyone, this information should be free and available to everyone. So if you want to protest, I'm down.
I'm here for it. And just so people know, because some people don't know, and I always want to inform people, when we protest, there's always a list of demands attached to it. So if we protested, it will be demanding that these opportunities be available. It will be demanding a legislative proposal. So yeah, as much as I love running around my BLM t-shirt, it's some policy changes and stuff happening with it.
I know that City College has a program that was initially for young Black people who wanted to, a fast track to becoming doctors. And now a lot of people don't know that it even exists. And this is a city college. So it, huh?
That needs to be on the list of demands.
Yes.
Information with everyone.
You know, it's, someone once said they went to Harvard, but there's two Harvards. It's the Harvard where if you don't know someone who is white, you don't know all the opportunities that Harvard offers. And then there's the Harvard where you should be just happy that you're here. And so, again, you could be in the same class with the same group of people and having a different experience than they are just based on race.
This is true.
Rachel, there was another question.
Yes, there's a question from Tawana Ham. This is for Councilwoman Lewis. What do you wish you had known prior to running for office that you want to share with the host?
I'm happy, Tawanda, thank you for asking that question. I never ever thought I would be in politics. I've always wanted to be Oprah. I always tell people that, and I stay true to that. I've wanted to be a journalist all my life since I was 6 years old. I knew that's what I wanted to do after seeing a friend die, a victim of vehicular manslaughter when I was a kid in East Flatbush. And, you know, running for office, the two most important things that I wish I knew was, one, how devious politics is. I actually suffer from PTSD after my race because someone that I hold near and dear to me and saw as a mentor was against me in my race. So just understanding politics and not being the faint of heart. Remember I shared that earlier? Yeah. That's one. And two, understanding the game. I remember I took the PBA endorsement. So one of my opponents approached the PBA for an endorsement. And I didn't know about it. The PBA reached out to me and I was like, no, thank you. I'm not interested. And everybody around me were like, no, you have to do it because the opponent and, you know, and I felt pressured to do it. And I regret it every day. I remember crying for months. I regretted it every day. The PBA still endorsed me, even though I said I would be against them keeping 50A. They still endorsed me. Till this day, I don't know why they endorsed me, and pressure is the reason why I even took it, why I even went for it. But I learned a lot, and I always tell young women, just young people in general that are thinking about running for office, stay true to who you are. Don't allow outside voices and influencers to change who you are and why God, if you believe in God, led you to this decision where you want to be. So I want to leave that with you, that, you know, running for office, you got to stay true to who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Shivona?
I couldn't agree more. People who used to hold hands in solidarity with me were out canvassing for my opponents. You have to keep your mental health good. You have to have faith. You a lot of strength. And then you always have to remember your why, because it's going to get rough. You're going to get beat up. You're going to get knocked down. You have to remember why you're doing it. Why do you love your community so much? Why do you think that you can affect change? And run your course and try and block out some of the naysayers. It's weird. When you run for office, people feel like they can say absolutely anything to you. Like the things that people say to you. But yeah, staying true to yourself and remembering your why and just keeping the faith and staying strong. It was an opportunity and a journey that I've taken, not like any other. This may have been one of the toughest things that I've ever set out to accomplish. And I've been a financial advisor. I've done all these things that I'm very proud of, but running for office is the toughest. But you have to remember that your community is more important than you and your personal feelings.
Thank you. Like I said, I feel like I'm looking at in a mirror, talking and listening to both of you, intelligent, awesome, determined, badass women. I appreciate all the knowledge that you imparted tonight, and the wisdom and just your effort to push the needle forward. Again, I'm inspired. I continue to be inspired. Anything I can do to help in any way, work with you, I'm here for it. I hope that I'm able to contact you for some advice when the road gets rocky and those long nights seem like I should give up. I'm going to reach out. So I appreciate
Please
this.
do so. We have to get on this call. Please do so.
We've been trying this for like 2 months.
Well, you know, I just, the election just finished a month ago. Exactly. My little self-care,
No,
but I am here for it. I'm here
yeah.
for it. We have to.
I'm not saying it in a negative way. I was just like, I live vicariously through your posts,
Wow.
and the work. No, it inspires me and it keeps me, when it gets rocky for me, I always say, keep walking, Sheba. And then I have my Malcolm X magnet on my refrigerator when he's doing like this, and it's almost like he's saying, so what you gonna do? What you gonna do? And I just say, I'm gonna keep walking. And something great happens, right, like literally right after that. So I'm inspired. Thank you again, ladies. Does anyone have any final question? If not, we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, I think we have one more question from Jacinta, actually. So Jacinta is asking, what legislation is currently in place to reduce communities of color from entering foster care, lucrative businesses via ACS and CPS police? And also the addendum to that is, will the criminal police reform laws apply to CPS police?
On the city council side, I know that there are 2 council members that are actually working proactively on the ACS side. For the other ones, we don't have anything that I could think of right now. I could come back to you with an answer to your question, but definitely ACS needs major reform, and I'm here for it. And that is something that I know there's 2 members in the city council working actively on that. So I could get back to you on that question.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Rochelle, Sheba, Ms. Newsome, and Dare to Run. And everyone, stay true to yourself. Be safe. Be blessed.
Thank you, Farah. Have a good night.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Good night. Bye-bye.